Welcome home to the Crash the Pond podcast. Hockey is back, actually back. No more glorified practices. Two real NHL games, two real Ducks games to talk about. How are we doing?
Feeling great. Having hockey back this weekend was so good. We now have a couple of days off before the Ducks play Utah, and we're in the thick of it, Felix, where by the time we talk again next week, the Ducks will have played, I think, like 3 or 4 more games.
Oh my
if I'm
God.
thinking about it right. Like, we've gone from making it through the summer to talking about rookie camp to talking about preseason to now we have 2 games to talk about. Next week, we're going to have 3 games to talk about. 3 or 4, depending on when we record next week. It's just starting to move, and I got to say it. There's a little bit of hope.
Wow.
I'm feeling good after the weekend.
Going there.
I think there are things to build off of from this weekend. And weirdly, I'm feeling more hopeful about the team after the loss than I am after the win.
Wow. Going there right away. Straight
We
away.
We are.
Yeah, it feels like now we went from, I'm just dying for hockey to be back to now I'm like, I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose where there's just so many games. I feel like I've just been watching hockey for like 48 hours since the season started. So it's fun. I'm enjoying it. Should we just talk about the games right away? Should we just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Skip the pleasantries. So the Ducks are 1-1 at the time of this recording, and 2 very different games this weekend, a back-to-back. The Ducks start off in San Jose. They win that one 2-0. Interesting game that we'll talk about and get into. And then last night, they drop it 3-1. They lose to the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas. Why don't we start with the Sharks game? Just because I think we can just dispense of that one more quickly.
Yeah, the Sharks game, we dove into it on our Patreon episode, I think, a lot more in depth. And so I think for everyone out there that wants a very in-depth look at this game, go take a listen. Go check out our Patreon as a subtle plug right now, patreon.com/crashthepond. But
Very subtle.
very, very subtle. We talked about it there, but this almost felt like a glorified preseason game. It felt like both teams were still figuring things out. It felt like the Ducks... It felt like they weren't fully clicking. It felt like things were still trying to be figured out at times. And it felt like there was some sloppiness in the offensive zone in transition, some sloppiness in the defensive zone with coverage. And the Ducks just had a really outstanding performance by one Lukas Dostal. And they had a really good performance by their fourth line, and they got rewarded for a goal. And I think the other part that's somewhat noteworthy out of it was the fact that Trevor Zegras was on the ice late in the game. And while I do think it's noteworthy, I think there was a time early last season where that happened also, but he was given the trust in this game by Greg Cronin, and he rewards him for that by hitting the empty net to make it a 2-0 game. And so to me, this game, I don't have any large takeaways overall outside of the fact of it felt like most of the lines were a half second off. And the only line that really looked like they were going were the fourth line. And that kind of makes sense with the fact that the team had about a week off, and that fourth line is probably the one that's least reliant upon skill and timing. And you mentioned this on the Patreon episode, but more reliant upon kind of their effort, north-south type play, and that type of stuff. So it kind of makes sense that or passes the sniff test from that perspective.
Yeah, and then the thing that you didn't mention is that Jackson Lacombe was a late scratch from the lineup with an illness, and Olin Zellweger came in. And I'll circle back to that, but to your point, the fourth line was very good in that game. Lundestrom, Leeson, and McGinn, they were excellent. They were very disruptive. They got the game-winning goal, and they just looked great. And I think that for the Ducks, having a solid fourth line is a huge addition. And outside of that, I mean, you kind of said it up front, but like this kind of felt like a preseason game. You know, there just was very little cohesion. The Ducks were not really that good defensively. Lukas Dostal kind of bailed them out in a way. Like, it just wasn't a very good game for the Ducks, but they managed to limit the damage as much as they could. But really, when your goalie is perfect, everything just looks better. I didn't think it was a very clean game at all, just like top to bottom. Circling back to Zellweger, though, I thought that what was fascinating is that So they announce very close to game time that Lacombe is out with an illness, and apparently it's the flu. Um, but Zellweger did not play very much in this game. And what's interesting about that to me is that Zellweger came in to this season feeling like one of the more established guys on the back end because he had that stint in the AHL. He cracked the lineup. It felt like now he was a set in stone NHLer, and instead wasn't slated to even be in the lineup last night. Comes in late and plays the least amount of minutes on the back end by a pretty decent margin. I mean, he played 13:43. So,
I think he played the least amount of minutes of any Ducks player at 5-on-5. I think he played like 8 minutes at 5-on-5 in that game.
Yep, he played 8:49, which was a team low at 5-on-5,
which is insane for a defenseman to be the team low from a minutes perspective.
So what do you make of this Zellweger situation? Because I guess we can already transition a little bit into the Vegas game, but then he was scratched against Vegas. So yeah, what's going on there?
It's odd. So, and I was just curious. So last season, actually, in the 26 games he's played, guess what his average time on ice was in those games?
I'm going to say like 16?
19-17. Like, they were not afraid of using him, and they played him with Cam Fowler. Like, this is not a situation where this is a player that Greg Cronin is not familiar with. And so I think that I don't agree with the decision to sit him after the San Jose game in the sense of I think
he barely played.
No. But I think the reasoning for why they played Vaakanainen against Vegas as compared to Zellweger is they probably viewed Vegas as being a bigger, heavier team, and they wanted a guy like Vaakanainen that's a bit older, a bit bigger, and being able to maybe handle that forecheck a bit better. And that was probably their reasoning. And I think that logic could hold regardless of how much Zellweger played in the game against San Jose. I don't agree with that, but I think the more troubling thing is just the amount that he played against San Jose. I don't think it's necessarily that he was scratched against Vegas. I just think it's that the ice time he had, because I just don't understand the logic there necessarily, especially against a team like San Jose where, like, I don't think Zellweger looked bad. I don't think he had any glaring mistakes that would have caused him to not play. He played 13 minutes in the large majority if he was quarterbacking the number one unit on the power play. And so I guess I'm just confused in terms of what they're seeing, what's happening there. And I don't have a good answer for it, I guess.
You know who else played 13 minutes this weekend?
Urho Vaakanainen.
Yep. Him and Zellweger basically had the same exact ice time.
No power play time for him, but yeah.
Well, the end result is that neither of them are playing very much. And
yes.
I am confused as well, because I don't know what Zellweger did to get to this point, but I think when you zoom out, when you put the scratch together with the low ice time, with the fact that he wasn't even supposed to play, if Lacombe is healthy, he doesn't play at all this weekend probably.
Yeah.
I just, it feels like he's a little bit on the fringes right now. And, the Greg Cronin clearly has a pecking order. Tristan Luneau is getting healthy amounts of ice time. Cam Fowler still playing a ton. Mintyukov and Dumoulin are inseparable, and Gudas is Gudas. It just feels like Zellweger's on the outside looking in, and I don't understand it, quite frankly, because yes, Urho Vaakanainen is the steady, kind of simple defenseman, but Zellweger's just better. I mean, I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. Yes, maybe Vaakanainen does some things better, but Zellweger's just better. He should be if Lacombe is out, he should clearly be in over Vaakanainen. That's just a no-brainer. And he played so little against San Jose, he barely played. He would have been fresh to play against Vegas. He would have been fine. So once Lacombe comes back, which if it's just an illness, then we assume that'll be quickly. I'm very curious when's the next time Zellweger will play. I mean, Luno had a gaffe against the Golden Knights. Maybe he'll draw out and Zellweger will come in, but that is a bit of a troubling sign for me. And it's not necessarily a bad thing for the team and the end result, but he's an important piece of the young core.
It's also very early in the season. We're 2 games in. The caveat with, I think, everything that we're talking about right now is this will be looked back upon in a month from now and look like extremely reactionary to
what if he plays like 5 games by then, though?
No,
like, what if he's just not in the lineup?
Sure. There's also the potential 10 games from now, or a month from now, he's played 90% of the games, and this was a blip in the radar. Like,
but here's my question though.
Yeah.
If Luno is the guy for them right now, what's it gonna take to change this mix? Who is the guy who's coming out of the lineup for Zellweger to play 90% of the games?
I don't know if Luno is the guy right now. I think they wanted to get him games, and I think probably what they're going to be seeing is hopefully in the same way of what we're seeing. Tristan Luno needs time in the AHL. And we can get into the Vegas game in a little bit, but I think that is the end result coming out of this is Tristan Luno is going to need to go to the AHL. Apologies, folks. Still fighting this cough, trying my best to not cough into the mic. But I think Tristan Luno will end up in the AHL, and Olen Zellweger will play with Cam Fowler, and that will be kind of how this ends up happening. I think that is the end result. I think we're in the early days here where things are still getting figured out. And I think while we want to talk about this, and rightfully so, we should be talking about this for everyone, I also think in a month from now, we'll look back on this and be like, okay, that really wasn't that big of a deal at that time. There is the potential, you're right, that a month from now, he's played 5 games and it is a big deal. And we're wondering what the hell is going on here.
Well, but, I mean, it's not even if he barely plays, it's not a big, like, it won't be this huge deal then, and it's not a huge deal now. It's just interesting that a guy who felt like he was a set in stone piece of the lineup is now fighting to just get table scraps. And we'll talk about it, but I'm not convinced Luno's coming out anytime soon. I am very unconvinced about that.
Any other takeaways from San Jose before we jump into the Vegas game, which I think is the more interesting game to talk about?
Well, I think that we haven't talked about him enough, but Dostal. Yeah. Dostal is just really good. He looked good in preseason. He continues this kind of upward trajectory for him. And on this weekend where the Ducks goalies allowed, 3 goals combined in 2 games, Reimer allowing 3, obviously, goaltending is not an issue right now in the absence of the $6 million man, John Gibson. So
James Reimer was a plus goal saved above expected goalie last season.
Yep.
Like, James Reimer, while he's older and is a backup and won't be able to have a workload that John Gibson does, he's a solid enough goalie. Like, he's not a bad goalie. Like, that was a very savvy pickup by Pat Verbeek in the meantime while Gibson is out. Like, he is a goaltender that, I mean, Gibson has his ups and downs. When Gibson is on his game, he is without a doubt a better goalie than James Reimer. But if Gibson is off his game, which we've seen at various points in time over the last couple of years, like, what James Reimer gave you yesterday was better than what John Gibson can give you when he's playing a worse game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And goaltending right now for the Ducks is not a problem. I still don't think that means John Gibson is getting traded anytime soon, but it's something to monitor.
Yep. So, all right, let's jump into the Vegas game, because to me, the Vegas game is where the season fully started.
Yeah, because I would agree with that.
Like, the San Jose game felt half preseason-y. It felt like Ducks getting their legs under them. The Vegas game was the first game where it felt like the intensity was there. It felt like the Ducks, it felt like the first 5-10 minutes, the Ducks were on their heels a bit. And Vegas ended up scoring, and it felt like after the goal against, the Ducks kind of found their sea legs a little bit. Oh, Felix, I have lost your audio somehow. Did you come unplugged? So while you figure that out, I will, I guess, just add to it. You were typing something. Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you muted yourself.
Well, I was getting this crazy static in my headphones, so I unplugged my mic and plugged it back in.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, folks. Bump in the road. But yeah, this Vegas game, what angle do we take from this game? Because there's just so many things to pick apart, I thought, in this performance.
I think overall I came out of this game feeling really good from the perspective of, I think there's a lot to be built off of on this game. I think there are definitely going to be mistakes, and I know that you could say that this happened last season, but I think the fact that the Ducks went into Vegas and they ended up winning the expected goal share battle at 5-on-5 at 2.94 to 2.31. And this is a Ducks team that was close to bottom of the league in expected goal share last season. And so the fact that they went in there and ended up winning the expected goal battle, I think was really impressive to me. And I think what was more impressive to me was how they did it with some of their shifts. I think that the Ducks had some really dominant shifts where I think against San Jose, they didn't really have any shifts where it looked like they were dominant in the offensive zone with penetrating, getting offensive looks off the cycle, and creating dangerous chances. Whereas I feel like against Vegas, which is a much more well-disciplined team, they were able to take the offensive zone time and create looks. I think the Troy Terry, Frank Vatrano, Ryan Strome line were a line that certainly did that. And Zegras, McTavish, Fabry had their moments also. And so I think there was a lot to be built off of with those two lines getting their chances. I think the only disappointment really big time for me is the Karlsson line at this point in time, because I think the Karlsson line in this game just felt like they just couldn't ever get anything going. And it bears itself out in the numbers where they are looking more like a low event line, which isn't something you necessarily want when you have guys like with the level of talent of Leo Karlsson. And so I think for me, the big takeaway is that you have one really, really good line at this point in time. And it is the line with Frank Vatrano, Ryan Strome, and Troy Terry. And then McTavish, Zegras together have shown flashes. And I think they'll get going. But I think the other takeaway is something I think has to happen with the Karlsson line because, or I guess not something has to happen in terms of a change necessarily, but there has to be at least internal change with how the line is producing.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that you look at their numbers on Natural Stat Trick for just that line at 5-on-5, 16 shot attempts for and 5 against with them on the ice. So if you just looked at the numbers, they look like a dominant line.
Which line are we talking about?
Karlsson.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think you said that they were not great by the numbers, and at least with Natural Stat Trick, their numbers are really good.
Sorry, by that I meant they were just low event.
Yeah, I mean they were second in shot attempts for, so among the 4 lines. So the low event line was the 4th line. But anyway, I think what's interesting with them is that the numbers look good, but watching them play, it's very clear that Leo Karlsson and Cutter Gauthier are kind of on the same wavelength because they're both very rush-based guys. Like, they are so good. Yeah. They're both so good at spacing the ice. So one will get the puck along the boards in the D zone. The other will already be flying up, building up speed, gets the puck in movement and motion, and then just stick handles through the neutral zone. You have an entry where you can create a shot. Then there's a rebound. Those two are great at that. And they're kind of like peas in a pod. I mean, we've talked about this so much. Mm-hmm. The guy who's not a pea, who's not in this pod, is Alex Killorn, because he is just so much slower than both of them. And you don't need 3 guys who are just absolute burners. You don't need everyone to be the same exact speed on a line. But it's just unclear what Killorn brings to that line. Because yes, there will be times where they will be set up off, on the cycle, working it around the boards in the offensive zone, and Killorn will post up in front of the net, or he'll kind of find that quiet ice and bang home a rebound, or get that type of goal. But the way that the Ducks want to play, which is all about speed, which is all about creating speed off the puck, Killorn just doesn't fit that. And doesn't mean he doesn't have a role on this team, but with those 2 guys who love to play in space, who love to play with speed, again, it's just 2 games, so maybe this is very reactionary, but it looks like a mismatch. And I mean, you saw it on the late penalty, which would end up being the backbreaker for the Ducks, but there's a zone entry created by Karlsson and Gauthier. Puck gets turned over. Vegas goes back the other way, and Killorn has to grab onto the Vegas player because he's so slow, and he takes a penalty, and that's pretty much ball game. So I'm kind of like, I still want to give them a few games before I really dial in that opinion, but it's already, like, I just don't know, like, Alex Killorn's not going to get faster in 5 games.
Yeah.
So that reality is not going to change. But you talked about them, though. Strome, Vatrano-Terry have just been the Ducks' best line by a lot in the early going.
Yeah, they've been so good. And I think against San Jose, they maybe didn't have the same impact that they did against Vegas. Against Vegas, they were a top line. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, I'm looking at the numbers right now. They were sitting around like 1.4 expected goals as a line. And so, in contrast, the reason why I said low event, the Carlson-Gauthier-Killorn line was around 0.5.
Mm-hmm.
So, almost 1 expected goals lower between those two lines. And what really made them tick was, I think Troy Terry, just his game was there against Vegas. I think against San Jose, maybe he was a little bit a half second off, different things like that, the things that make people frustrated. But he was doing those same things against Vegas, and it was just working. And that's the thing is, when he's on his game and those types of plays are going, he is a dominant force. And Ryan Strome and Frank Vatrano are two guys that can really kind of sit off the puck. Ryan Strome's a facilitator. He can kind of be someone that Troy Terry can play off of. And then Frank Vatrano can find soft spaces on the ice. And that line's just really working because of how much Troy Terry is able to drive play. And I think maybe that's what Strome and Vatrano have not had in the past, because Mason McTavish, for as much as he can be good offensively, he's not necessarily a play driver in the way that Troy Terry is. And then additionally, you have Troy Terry putting in the work in the defensive zone to really help them out. And so that line, I mean, Greg Cronin deserves flowers for putting those guys together. You could also maybe look at why didn't they get a look last year, but I mean, they're working right now.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you talked about the defensive work for Terry. I mean, the lone goal of the night, Terry kind of sniffs out a pass at the defensive blue line, intercepts it, and then goes back the other way, scores all alone. Beautiful shot where he totally fooled Samsonov, the Vegas goalie, by like faking, I think it was blocker side, and then he ends up going low glove. It was a perfect shot. But I think what's interesting with Strome is that, you know, yes, he's this kind of like facilitator, small stuff, but he's also making plays. I mean, there will be plays down low where he'll be circling the net, looking for options. Like he's an active participant in this line. And then Vatrano is just Vatrano. I mean, he's going to buzz around the ice. He's going to get shots off. He's going to do the dirty work. And there's just no one to get in Terry's way, because we've seen Terry be good with like a Zegras and a Carlson and that line be magical at times. But also, maybe this is just the way to get the most out of Terry. Just put him on a line with two kind of more grinder types and just let him go to work. I mean, so far that theory is looking really solid. Granted, it's just 2 games.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the quote-unquote hero puck works better when you're with two guys that don't need the puck as much.
Well, also, it's interesting because someone brought this up in our chat just now, but Strome was great next to Artemi Panarin and back when he was a Ranger.
True.
And yes, it's Artemi Panarin. He's made a lot of people look good, but Panarin and Terry are similar in that they both love to have the puck on their stick a lot. And so, hey, maybe he found his Panarin.
Yeah.
So yeah, that line is a huge success.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the McTavish line, or do you have something else?
Sure. Let's jump on the McTavish line. I was going to jump to the blue line, but go for the McTavish line.
Yeah. So I think that they actually look pretty good. I mean, they don't really have anything to show for it yet.
Yeah.
But Zegras, to me, he just looks great. I mean, I can't even really think of any glaring mistakes he's made in these 2 games. Like he's so much more involved physically. You know, he's trying to body guys off the puck along the wall or shielding the puck. I think he's a lot more hungry to hunt the puck down when he's forechecking. And then when he has the puck on his stick, I mean, he's doing Zegras things. He's creating plays for everyone else. McTavish is going to the net. McTavish could have scored a couple times probably against Vegas. And then Fabry is just like that Energizer Bunny disruptor. We haven't really seen him kind of get many good looks, but I think that there's potential with this line.
Yeah, and I think Zegras, the interesting thing that I've noticed is, which makes sense. I mean, you're dealing with a fluid system in the defensive zone. I think people get really focused in on defensive zone play from a center, but wingers are going to drop low also. We saw it plenty of times with Zegras as a center, Henrique or Raquel dropping low at different points in time. But there have been plenty of times where Zegras ends up low, and I think anytime he ends up low, he's making really smart plays with the puck on his stick, whether it's making a good outlet pass, whether it's getting it to another defenseman. He's not really having any turnovers down low so far when he's ended up down low and having really good board battles to win pucks.
Yeah, and someone brought this up in our chat, and you and I were actually having the same conversation before we started recording. But I think that we'll see how it goes. But I think Killorn could actually be a really good fit next to McTavish and Zegras, because They do play a little bit of a slower pace than Gauthier and Carlson. They're a little bit more methodical in the way that they play. I mean, I think Zegras looks a lot. I think Zegras' skating actually improved this year. I think he looks more explosive to me, but he's never going to be a Carlson or a Gauthier in the way he skates.
I'm just remembering I didn't tell you about this. So you have not been watching the Ducks broadcasts, but
Okay.
one thing they mentioned.
Way to just out me there, by the way.
Well, everyone knows you don't live in the Anaheim area.
I mean, I could still watch the broadcast, but yeah.
The San Jose game, you are local.
Oh, yeah.
That.
Yes. Okay.
So against San Jose, the Ducks broadcast made a point to state that Greg Cronin said that they want Zegras to be able to generate more speed through the neutral zone. And during their preseason testing, Trevor Zegras was the fastest skater on the team.
Wow. Look at that. I feel so vindicated right now.
That's why I brought that up, because of you saying that, flagged that for me in my head.
I've never felt so validated than just now. Where the eye test was not blatantly wrong. Well, the thing with him is that I think he's always been a quicker skater. It's just, and I remember Mitch Brown talked about this in his draft year, and it always stuck with me, which is that when he gets into the offensive zone with the puck, he just stops moving his feet. Mm-hmm. He starts hydroplaning, and that can work at certain levels. But there was a clip I posted, I think, on Twitter in the San Jose game where he attacks the offensive blue line with crossovers. Like he is moving those feet, goes straight into the teeth of the defense, and then kicks it out to McTavish, who gets a one-timer off. And I'm like, man, if Trevor Zegras can do that consistently, that just opens up another world of offense for him that has just never been available. So, yes, Zegras looks great. Despite that, though, I think that speed and straight line stuff is it's not his calling card. And I do think Alex Killorn could be an interesting fit on that line, because that line plays a little slower. You know, someone who doesn't look very fast right now is McTavish.
Yeah.
We'll see. But put Killorn next to them, and maybe he could thrive there. And then you put Fabry next to Carlson and Gauthier, who's a little bit quicker. Well, actually, who's a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And that could help. But yeah, I've been encouraged though by the Zegras line, even though it hasn't yielded points yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think against Vegas they had some rough shifts here and there, but they also had some really good shifts in the offensive zone where they were getting chances for them. But I guess the only line we haven't talked about is the fourth line so far, so might as well just talk about them right now.
They were good.
I think they're just giving you what you need from a modern day fourth line. McGinn, Leeson, Lundestrom is a perfectly good fourth line on a good team in the NHL.
Yep.
There's no Ross Johnston. They all can skate. They all can play. They're not going to hurt you. They're maybe not going to win you games necessarily, although they won them the game against San Jose.
Okay, they straight up did. So
yeah. But this is a line that is what you want from a modern day fourth line. These are not your bruisers necessarily. They all are guys that can play. And so,
I think Lundestrom looks a little quicker too. I think he's had a few plays now where he'll be circling around like he usually does, doing his whirly bird around the world, but he'll actually slam the brakes and change direction and make a play. And that's not something he's had before. Whereas the other two guys, Leeson and McGinn, are very north-south.
Go. Yeah.
So he can keep up with them skating-wise, but if he can add that little wrinkle, that's an intriguing line.
I mean, and also we've said this for a while, Isaac Lundestrom, if he's going to be in the NHL long-term, it's going to be as a fourth-line center. That's just kind of what he's projected as. And now that he's in that role, you're starting to see actually him potentially be able to thrive in a role.
Yeah, I was watching the goals this weekend, and I was thinking there's a lot of people coming for his job though as that fourth line center.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how long he's gonna hang on to it, but none of those other guys have made it yet, and he's acquitting himself nicely. It is kind of crazy to think that he was a first round pick, and this is basically his destiny is a fourth line center.
I mean, a late first round pick becoming an NHLer though is not a horrible end game for it. It also just makes you look back when people thought he would be a top 6 player.
No, that was always just banana pants.
100%.
Yeah.
But I guess to talk about the defense, I mean, the Ducks may have a legit top pair in Dumoulin-Mintyukov.
Yeah, for all the talk of Gudas being the guy, which I still think he is. as of right now. But Mintyukov and Dumoulin, by the eye test at least, look like the Ducks' best pairing. And honestly, it's not even really that close. And I guess it's not really fair to Gudas because Lacombe should be his partner and they haven't played together yet.
And Gudas has had good numbers so far this season. It has had better numbers than Dumoulin-Mintyukov.
Yeah, Gudas has looked fine. I think he's just been himself.
Yeah.
But Dumoulin and Mintyukov just pop off the screen a little bit more because they just have that extra level of offense that they can bring. Like Dumoulin can move the puck. He can make plays. And then Mintyukov is, I mean, he's just a wild man. So
Mintyukov is so much fun to watch. There were so many shifts in that Vegas game where he would just kill plays in the neutral zone.
Yeah.
With some hits and just cause a turnover and then have the puck go the other way. And they're both just making plays with the puck where he's able to move it. And I mean, this is why getting Brian Dumoulin felt like such a good move for the Ducks.
Yep.
Like this was one where so many people were bummed because of Pat Verbeek saying right-hand shot defenseman, but Brian Dumoulin was essentially that. Yep. And like, he's a guy that played with Chris Letang and was a top pairing defenseman for the Pittsburgh Penguins when they won a Stanley Cup. Like, this is not a guy that is a bad hockey player. This is a guy that maybe he's starting to get a little bit older, but like, he's been there. He has that experience and he could be like, the only concern was, can he play the right side? And it seems like he can with Pavel Mintyukov. And he had a really nice breakup of a play in the defensive zone to save a goal. Like, he's just really, really playing well. He's able to move the puck. He's able to play with Mintyukov. And then, like you said, Pavel Mintyukov is just doing Pavel Mintyukov things.
Yeah, I think Dumoulin just really fits what the Ducks are trying to do. You know, to have these very aggressive defensemen at the offensive blue line, killing zone exits, killing plays in the neutral zone, and then having the skill to be able to then do something with the puck. He has that. I mean, it's crazy how the Ducks have they've really found their type of defenseman that they want to make this Greg Cronin system go. And you're at least getting inklings of like how it can really work. Because it's interesting because like I don't think Gudas really fits that at all. He's not really that fast. He's not really like that great of a skater, but he just somehow makes it work. He's just Radko Gudas. He figures things out. But Mintyukov and Dumoulin have been a very nice surprise, and if they keep it up, like they could just be the top pairing. Although I'll withhold judgment until we actually see Jackson Lacombe play.
Did you see how many minutes that Mintyukov played against San Jose?
What was it, like 20 something?
He played 25 minutes.
Oh, that's right. We talked about it yesterday. Yeah,
he played 25 minutes, and then last night he played 21:15. Fowler played more than him at 22:49, but I think that was only largely because Fowler got caught out there for that penalty kill at the end of the game for all of it, which led him to exceed Mintyukov. So they're playing Mintyukov like he is a number one defenseman on this team.
Should we address the elephant in the room?
The Fowler-Luno pairing?
So, okay. Where do you want to start with this? The Fowler side or the Luno side?
I'll let you pick.
Those are very different universes to me.
They're very different. I think Fowler, I mean, the goal against was really bad.
Which one?
I guess the first one I'll go with, where he just straight up makes a pass to the Vegas player. I think
he's already thinking what life is going to look like once he gets traded to Vegas.
I think outside of that, like if you remove that mess up and just look at the overall play, I think Fowler played a fine enough game against Vegas.
What about the other goal though, where he was out of position and let a guy sneak in back door?
I'll wait. I didn't add the final caveat at 5-on-5.
I mean, the thing is, he's going to be out there though. Even if you can constrain it to 5-on-5, but like he's gonna be out there.
True.
And he had other mistakes as well. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you in that like those. This is something I was talking about today to myself while recording a video. But I'll share it now. This is great. This is great. I'm no longer talking to myself. But how do you weigh an overall solid game, but 2 to 3 just brutally destructive moments? Like, what holds more weight? Because I think that in a single game, as a 15-year veteran, to me at least, those big mistakes hold a lot of weight. Because that's essentially, you're the guy that's supposed to not make those mistakes. In the course of a season, holds less weight. And I'm going to look more at the process. But for the course of that game, even zooming out, I just think Fowler, there should just be a higher standard for him. Whereas if it's a Mintyukov or a Luno or someone else making that mistake, I don't feel quite as critical of it, because those guys just haven't played as much hockey as he has. Those guys have barely been alive as long as he has. So
I think the only thing that you get in danger of is letting goals impact your entire analysis of players.
No, and that's why I'm saying, like, he is not, like, I'm not saying he's a bad player because of those goals.
I'm answering your question though, basically, with that of kind of what's more important. And so I think if you are purely looking at those impactful plays, I think you get into the habit of only looking at goals against and goals for and using that for your whole analysis of a player.
Yeah.
And so I think that those were destructive plays, without a doubt. If those destructive plays keep happening, the numbers will end up reflecting that, though. And so I think that the fact that he ended up above 50% shows that outside of those plays were really bad, no doubt. But I think he was able to have some solid enough play outside of that. He needs to clean up those plays. Those are not plays he should be making. Like, that turnover for the first goal was just an unexcusable play that would get someone like a Trevor Zegras benched.
Well, also the worst part about it to me is that then he was slow to get back to the front of the net.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he just hustles back, the goal might not even happen. So, yeah, but there were also moments where I thought he made some really nice plays on breakouts.
Yep.
Like there was one where he just had this like change of direction where he totally faked out the forechecker.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, like that was nice. That was vintage Cam Fowler.
Yep.
So, I mean,
it was an adventure of a game for Fowler, which I think is just what he's going to be at this point.
He's a guy that the Ducks need to play well if they want to trade him for value.
Yeah.
Tristan Luno.
The other side of it.
Tristan Luno. This is the one where I didn't watch the third period last night, and then you texted me today, or was it Connor? Someone,
one of us
said like, "Oh, you're gonna hate the third goal against because of Luno." And I watched it, and yes, Luno made a huge mistake. Like, do you disagree with that?
Oh, it was horrible.
I mean,
it was a similar level to the Fowler mistake.
Yes, but there's a big but.
Okay.
Big old but. But so he makes this weird cutback move that had like very low like upside. I'm not really sure what like the intent was there. And then he tries to recover, can't. Puck ends up at the back of the net. But Tristan Luno has barely played hockey the last year. Barely played hockey at all. Tristan Luno is 20 years old. Tristan Luno is a baby in NHL terms. When I look at the body of work for his entire game last night, I thought he was solid. I thought he actually had a pretty good game. I thought that he made plays in the offensive zone, which is kind of his bread and butter. He was well positioned, in the neutral zone, killing plays. In the defensive zone, I didn't really think he had any big mess ups in the defensive zone. Obviously, absent of
that one, yeah.
Absent the goal, but I just think that my thing with Luno is that the standard just needs to be a little lower with him, because but even if you remove those training wheels, I still don't think he had a bad game.
So that's interesting. I am on the flip side. I thought he was better against and I know because you and I had the Patreon episode, you didn't think he had a great game against the Sharks overall.
No, I didn't.
And I think he was much better against the Sharks. I thought he was more noticeable in the offensive zone with driving play, things like that. I don't think against Vegas he generated that much offense from that. And then he had a decent amount of turnovers in his own zone that led to sustained defense or sustained offensive pressure.
Yeah, there was that
for Vegas.
There was that 3-minute shift where they just couldn't get out of the zone.
Yeah, and he had a couple of turnovers in that sequence. And so
I mean, there's definitely moments where his plays are lacking a little execution, but nothing that really is like, oh my God, this guy just sucks.
No, and I guess that's not what I'm saying with Luno. I think that the game yesterday was rougher, though, and I think that he definitely showed more of his inexperience. And you're right that he has not played that much. But I think that, for me, last night's game was more so a sign of he's a guy that really could use the time in the AHL. And I know that you're not going to disagree with that necessarily. And so I think that was the game for me that was the aha moment of, okay, he needs more time, he needs more seasoning, and he needs to really kind of do what Olen Zellweger did last year. He hasn't played a lot of hockey, and just getting him to play hockey, getting him to play at the pro level, let him dominate. Like, don't put him in a situation, I guess, where we are having to say, let's adjust the expectation on him, because that's where you potentially end up with stifling someone's development, like what happened with Jamie Drysdale. And the Ducks are in a position where they don't necessarily need to have Tristan Luneau in this lineup.
I agree with pretty much everything you said. Yeah. But, and now a shameless plug, our Patreon today, I posted a video just watching every shift he played against Vegas. I think like, when you really think about how little he's played, he looks great out there. I mean, he looks like he belongs. I don't think he looks like a fish out of water right now in the lineup.
Okay.
Like yes, there are mistakes, but I mean, I don't know. I'm really, I don't want to say I'm split on this, but I think give him a few more games. I really think that as he just picks up speed, as he gets the timing down, a lot of his issues right now, I would say 90% of his issues right now are just timing based. And I'm very curious in 5 to 10 games, when his timing kind of gets back, he could just be great. He could be really good right away. And I did not think I would come away with that thought going into watching his game today. I thought I was going to be, back to the AHL. And I still agree with you that going back to the AHL could be what's best for him. But I'm kind of on the fence. I think it could still work in the NHL. So don't write him off just yet.
Yeah.
Hold out hope. Watch the video. Sign up for the Patreon.
Well, I guess here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you rather be playing right now for the Ducks in the NHL? Tristan Luneau or Olen Zellweger?
I mean, it's dumb that we even are having to have this conversation, but yeah, it's Zellweger. Clearly, it's Zellweger. Like, just logically, it's Zellweger. Luneau has barely played. Luneau could definitely use AHL time. I totally agree that, like, just surviving in the NHL might not be as preferable to going down to San Diego and really getting to just fly. Zellweger has earned it. Zellweger has had the time in the AHL. He also was playing in the NHL last season with pretty good usage. He showed that he belonged. I totally agree with you that Zellweger should be there if it's the choice. What I'm wondering about is, like, how long is Cam Fowler on this team? Yeah, that's something I'm very curious about. I mean, I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. All right, let's get to the actual real negative for this team from this game, because we've talked glowingly, and the Ducks lost this game 3-1.
Well, I think we're still at the point where, like, we're kind of watching the macro trends and lines and things.
But
yeah,
there was a macro also negative of more of the same from last season.
Yep.
Which was the Ducks took, 4 penalties in the game?
I mean, that's not that bad by last year's standard.
They took 4 penalties in this game. I think against San Jose, they had much better discipline. But so far, the power play has not looked good at all. The penalty kill has also not looked good at all. When looking at Evolving Hockey's numbers so far for teams, the Ducks, I think, rank, I'm trying to pull it up right now, but I think they rank like 30th in expected goals for per 60 on the power play, and they rank around that same level in expected goals against per 60 on the penalty kill. Yeah, the Ducks are 30th in expected goals for per 60 power play, and where are they at for expected goals against on the penalty kill? They currently sit, 30th in that also.
So, in a shocking twist of fate, I want to talk about the penalty kill first.
Okay.
So, there's been a lot of hubbub about them switching to this, like, diamond formation where they're very compressed, protecting the house, protecting the middle of the ice, and they have their kind of wingers flared out to the side to really just block any cross-ice passes. But I think what Vegas showed us is that they're allowing so much room for the puck carrier at the point to just walk in. And once that happens, one penalty killer has to come out to challenge him. That creates a leak somewhere else, and it's kind of this domino effect. So I think they actually looked, to me, the penalty kill looked pretty good against the Sharks. I thought that they had some really good reps, but then against Vegas, which is probably the better litmus test, it just seems like this strategy, although I still think it can work against a really good offensive team, like they're just going to expose you. I mean, Jack Eichel, Shea Theodore, they are just so good at picking people apart. Maybe it's not the most fair test, but to me, I'm unconvinced about the penalty kills so far. Although I think it can work.
Yeah.
You just think it's bad.
I don't know if I really have a great opinion on it. I think I need to see it more necessarily. I just know that it was not working well. I don't really have a great analysis, I think, of the penalty kill. I just know the analysis I have is you're taking that many penalties and you are allowing that many chances. It's not going to be a recipe for success, and something kind of has to happen. And whether it's pressuring the puck carrier, whether it's an adjustment of some sort, I just, whatever they were doing against Vegas, it's a single game. It can easily be cleaned up. It potentially was just a poor game by the penalty kill. The system could potentially still work. Like, there's a whole lot there. But as of right now, it's more of the same from the penalty kill in terms of the amount that was taken and the quality of looks against.
All right, the power play.
Yeah.
Does anything feel really all that different?
No.
I think that one little thing I noticed against Vegas is that they're getting into more situations where guys who have a preset role will end up moving around. So like Terry's supposed to be more of like a low man, but he ended up being more of a flank guy. So like maybe they're trying to introduce more of a variability in the roles, but the end result is like the first power play with Carlson just straight up wasn't good in the 2 games this weekend.
Yeah.
And that is not a good sign because
the zone entries have not been good. I mean, Tristan Luneau should not have been near that power play unit against Vegas.
At the end of the game?
No, they only had 1 power play, but yeah, he was the guy that was on the first power play unit.
I mean, I thought he was fine. I thought
he had some fumbles with the puck.
Yeah, but like, I don't think that those were anyway. Point is, I don't. I mean, it was very random that he was there. I will agree with that. But if you're trying to develop him, I guess that's what you do. You live with it.
I guess.
Olin Zellweger's in the press box.
Vatrano-Strome-Terry could have been with that unit instead. Yeah.
But he is not the problem, though, with that unit. Because he's not ultimately the guy you're counting on. Leo Carlsson, Cutter Gauthier, and, Killorn. Was it Killorn? Oh, no, McTavish and Terry. It's just not there. And, power plays are very much a timing thing, very much a rhythm thing. So maybe you give it a few games and it'll look a lot better. But the process doesn't feel all that different. I will say, though, the second unit looks a lot better than the first unit. Once again.
It does.
Once again.
The one thing I wanted to add about the first unit and just both units in general, the zone entry is exactly the same.
Yep.
It is the defenseman brings the puck up from behind the goal line, and then he almost slams on the brakes once he gets to the blue line or neutral zone.
The Luno one was really funny.
Yeah, that's almost the one I'm thinking of.
Because penalty killers now are just staying at the other blue line, and they're just waiting, and I love that. I love that adjustment.
And so it's just like, it's the same exact play the Ducks were running all last season, and you have 2 guys, I think on the first unit it's Carlson and Terry, that are side by side, and it didn't create any clean zone entries. It didn't really create a lot of clean zone entries last season either, or easy zone entries. And so it just feels like something needs to go back to the drawing board, and you would have expected with Rich Clune coming in that would have changed, but it's the same kind of deal. But the second unit, I think, is getting in a little bit better. It's still not great.
Zegras.
But that was where I was going to go, is that whole unit's being driven by Trevor Zegras on the left half wall. Like, the puck gets to him, and you can tell that he is just the man kind of running that thing. And that's what that power play runs through. It kind of all goes through him. I think that power play works.
Mintyukov was with Zegras, too.
Yeah,
at one point.
They both work. I think the only thing is it can get a little bit predictable with Frank Vatrano there, and he will just set up for the one-timer, and that's it.
They didn't really get it to him much, though.
There was one where it was just like the goaltender was set on him, and he still just fired it like that, and it was just very predictable. But, like, I mean, I think to me, like, what this shows is I think Zegras has to be on that first unit. I think you got to find a way to adjust it, whether maybe it's swapping Carlson out. Maybe that's where it goes.
I was going to say, like, Carlson, for whatever reason, has not really translated to the power play in the NHL so far.
Yeah.
And I just really think that Zegras has got to be like your focal point for the power play.
Well, and
like,
you think about Trevor Zegras' game, right? Like, he thrives on space. Like, he is going to break you down if you give him space. He thrives on deception, thrives on creating more openings for other guys. And that is exactly what the power play is for.
Yep.
So,
yep, I agree. I mean, it's very strange. It's very strange, but I'm willing to give them like a little more time.
It's 2 games. Like,
yeah.
With everything that we've talked about here, some people may take this and both from a good and bad perspective be like, okay, the Ducks are great or the sky is falling. It's 2 games.
Yeah.
More like 1 game. There's not a whole lot of like long-term takeaways that can be.
Well, I was going to say,
right now.
Look at the difference between the first and second game. It was like night and day. So, I mean, next game I think is against Utah.
Yeah.
So, Utah will be an interesting one because I feel like that's a team where, the Ducks are maybe a little bit. The Ducks are definitely behind them rebuild-wise, but they can compete with them.
Well, I feel like that's a team the Ducks should be competing with. That's a team where the Ducks should be in a similar vein to them.
Like, that should be a pretty even game, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Vegas, at the end of the day, which is something we haven't really talked about much, but you're judging the Ducks in a bit of a different curve. Vegas is a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations, that has had the Ducks number now for years and years. And based on that standard, the Ducks did great because usually they just get their shit kicked in by the Golden Knights, and this time they did not. So, good job for clearing that bar, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything else? Oh, there was one thing I wanted to ask you about. How do you think Cutter Gauthier looks? 2 games.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about him.
We haven't talked about him at all.
He looks like a rookie.
I don't think he looks that good.
Yeah, that's what I mean by he looks like a rookie.
Yeah. Well, that's why before the season, everyone was like, oh, top line, Carlson, Gauthier, Killorn. And I was like, careful. I mean, I thought he looked a lot better against Vegas than he did against the Sharks.
He also could have scored against the Sharks. Like, he had a wide open net and just kind of got hooked in the moment of truth.
But I thought against the Sharks, he looked very out of sorts. There were a lot of misplays. There was a lot of, like, fumbling the puck.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think that we just need to be careful with our expectations with Cutter Gauthier because it's going to take a little time.
And that's kind of what we said even before the season. You want to know actually my biggest takeaway on Cutter Gauthier?
What?
The tack skates. They look so good.
They look good. I
think him and Lundestrom are both wearing them.
Oh, is Lundestrom wearing them?
I think
did not notice that.
Yeah. It's a great look.
Yeah. I thought Gauthier also tried to shoot the puck a lot in situations where maybe he shouldn't have, but I need to remind myself that that's who Cutter Gauthier is. He's just going to do that. I do think it's hilarious, though, that remember after the 12 shot on goal preseason game he had?
Yeah.
Where it almost felt like people were like, oh, Cutter Gauthier's arrived. And it's like, not so fast.
Yeah. I mean, maybe me more hyped it up, but it was one of those where if this can continue, not win this.
Has anyone ever averaged 12 shots on a goal a game?
No.
I'm actually curious about this. Not even trying to poo-poo, just curious.
No.
Like Prime Ovechkin, maybe?
I don't think he was even there.
You need would that be like 800 shots on goal in a season? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, lots of good, lots of maybe some things to work on for the Ducks, but it's 2 games. So who knows?
Yep.
Who knows what this will look like? I think one thing that we need to be sure of to make note is that yes, it's 2 games, and in 10 games we'll be like, yes, it's 10 games, but there are times where that ends up being like true. Like what happens in those 10 games ends up being kind of what that team ends up becoming. So we can't just throw it out.
Yep.
But we do have to just keep kind of a perspective as well.
Yep.
So,
all right. Do you want to jump into questions or anything else?
I don't know. I feel like we're missing something. Did we miss something?
I don't think we did.
Well, I feel like we didn't actually talk very much about the game itself against Vegas.
But I mean, we did and we didn't.
Yeah. I think we did enough. We're like an hour in.
We did enough. I mean, would have liked to see them get a result out of that game, get a point at least. But I think it's early on in the season where you can have a moral victory. The only thing I'll say is that Troy Terry afterwards said, like, Vegas won that game because of their maturity and they capitalized on their power play and the Ducks didn't. And
That's
he's
fair.
like, we need to be more mature in our game. That's something we have to have happen this season, including myself. So,
yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting that Cronin made it seem like the second period is basically what killed them. Because he kept talking about how the second period had so many turnovers when the Ducks didn't give up a goal in the second period. All of their, two of the 3 goals that Vegas scored were in the third, and those were on, pretty glaring errors. So interesting take on it. But I find that Cronin's takes immediately after the game sometimes aren't completely in line with what happened because he hasn't seen the video yet. So,
Yep. All right. Want to jump to questions?
do we have questions?
We have some in Discord.
Okay.
We have a few. So for those of you listening on your favorite podcast services, you can find our Patreon exclusive Discord at patreon.com/crashthepond, where you get access. Oh, the coughs are coming a little bit. Get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, where you can ask us questions in there for the podcast, and we will jump right in because I'm going to cough in a second. Olaf asks us, admittedly small sample size theater, but what's been the most pleasant surprise through 2 games?
Most pleasant surprise.
I've got one.
I think I'm going to go with Mintyukov Dumoulin.
Okay.
I think that I was not expecting them to be that good right away.
I will go with the Terry Vatrano-Strome-Terry.
Oh, yeah. That's the low-hanging fruit.
Like, that is, we did so many different line concoctions throughout all of summer.
Yep.
Throughout all of preseason.
Yep.
And somehow, throughout every single variation that we ended up with,
Never came up with it.
We never, ever came up with these 3 together.
Well,
and
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but once you sit down and look at it, you're like, that makes sense that is working.
Yeah, well, I also think that we're still, because we've been doing this for so long with these same players or similar players, we're kind of still like, we have certain archetypes and notions baked into our analysis. And I kind of love that Cronin just did something totally outside the box of like, we didn't think about it, and we are like line combo junkies. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that move.
By the way, I'm going to just put this up. We just got a $5 super chat, so thank you so much.
Oh, from Chasing the
Biscuit. Say, hello,
Nice.
boys. Question for Felix. Thoughts on Slavkovsky's preseason fight plus Montembeau to Anaheim?
Okay, so Slavkovsky preseason fight, don't love it.
Okay.
Would rather not see the franchise player potentially getting injured in the preseason. Montembeau to Anaheim, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't necessarily either.
The Ducks don't really need Montembeau. They have Dostal, and eventually Gibson will be gone, but I think that at that point you'd see the backup.
Yep. And then he also said, correction to Jake, they said Zegras is one of the fastest, not the fastest. So thank you for that correction.
Though. The fact that he's in that top tier is, I don't think a lot of people would expect Trevor Zegras to test out that well skating speed wise.
Yeah.
So
our good friend Spencer said, longtime gents, I'm sure you're tired of 3 to 4 seasons of this, but I have to ask seriously about John Gibson. Say the Ducks were to trade John Gibson and get a goalie back, making approximately half of John Gibson's salary for the remainder of the 24-25 season. Would retaining $1.5 million be too much money to hold in your eyes on Gibson?
Wait, hold on a second.
I
So our longtime friend Spencer, who is an Avalanche fan,
yep.
What might be leading him to ask about John Gibson right now?
Yep.
Is it the Avs goaltending in the early going?
And what goaltender could he be talking about that is making, what did he say?
Is it Georgiev?
Half of John Gibson's salary for the remainder of this season? Is that Georgiev?
Yeah, probably. But no, I'm not against retaining on Gibson. It's not my money.
Georgiev makes 3.4.
Yeah, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Man, John Gibson on the Avalanche. How many times have we talked about that? A million?
Yeah.
But no, I'm not against it. And I'm not against retaining.
I'm not either. The payment the return has to be greater then.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're going to retain, then you need more back.
If you're going to retain and you're going to take back Georgiev.
Yeah. Which is almost like retaining more salary.
Yes.
At this point, with the way he's playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so For everyone in the Twitch and YouTube chat, start throwing your questions in. For those of you listening on your favorite podcast services, you can find us at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can support us there in a way that's completely free to you. You can be just like our good friend LewisX209, who resubbed for his 73rd month, and our good friend Kim Pafu, who resubbed for his 51st month. Or you can be just, or you can find us at YouTube. Go to youtube.com/crashthepond, where you can like and subscribe to our channel, and it does help out in ways more than you can imagine. Elizabeth Leo said, question, if you had a choice, would you rather have Zegras or McTavish at center?
Zegras.
Zegras for me also.
Yeah. I mean, I like them both at center, but I
also think we get stuck in this as much as all other people do. The game has gone away a bit from positions for forwards. Like,
yes
it's
and
more
no.
it's more F1, F2. Well, no, because I agree, but I think that it's not like as a hard set thing as a lot of people make it out to be, is I guess where I'm going with it. It is an F1, F2, F3 thing. It is a fluid thing. There are certain things that centers are going to be more likely to do than a winger is, but there is fluidity to it. And so I think by having Zegras and McTavish there, I think you have that fluidity throughout the game, I guess is where I was going with it.
I do agree with that, but I do think that you touched on it. Being a center or a winger does put you into certain situations more often. And for wingers, that is board play. There is just more board play as a wing, and some guys are really good at that, and that's where they thrive. Like, I think Mason McTavish does. Mason McTavish should be a great winger.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Zegras has had to learn that. Trevor Zegras was not really doing that
That's fair.
in college or in junior because he was a center. Trevor Zegras is, you said it yourself. He's at his best in space. And as a winger, you're taking away those potential scenarios where that's going to happen. So that's why I prefer him at center, but I agree with you that in general, it's not the end of the world. But it's like no one is saying, oh, Sidney Crosby is a wing, or Sidney Crosby put him at the wing. It's like, no, he's a center. There's a reason why he's a center, because he's great at it and because he's in those situations more often. So
yeah. Elizabeth Leo also said, question for Felix. Thoughts on Lane Hutson's his strengths and weaknesses?
Do you want to read them the text that I sent you earlier? That'll answer the question.
Let's see.
The text that you didn't respond to, but that's fine.
Yeah,
No
I have a child.
No worries.
I have a child that when I get home, I take over. I get it. Lane Hutson is special. I mean, to be fair, the other person in this group chat did not respond. I'm not going to out him.
So this is what I said.
Lane Hutson is special. Lane Hutson is the most electrifying Montreal Canadian I've ever seen. I'm quiet. Oh, not that.
Oh, no, don't read that. But yeah, Lane Hutson is amazing, and I said in the text, but I can't remember a player outside of like Carey Price, who's a goalie where it's different, that I'm like, every time he touches the puck, I am legit like on the edge of my seat. Like, just go, like, for anyone who hasn't watched his clips yet or watched his games, like, do so. He is a literal video game out there. It is actually insane what he's doing. So I will be buying my jersey soon enough.
Kevin Dillenbeck said, whether teams use the diamond for the penalty kill, I can't believe what I saw on the penalty kill. Or I just can't believe what I saw on the penalty kill.
I think it's a thing. There's a lot of teams that do it. Like, there's only so many ways you can slice an onion. And like the penalty kill, there just aren't that many variations. That is one of them. The Ducks have chosen this path. We'll see if in the long run it'll work for them, but early returns are mixed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're thinking about with that is they want to try to cut off the cross-ice pass, and they're willing to give up shots from the outside as a result of it.
Which is a noble pursuit.
Yeah. Alex Olvera said, question, do you think the bizarre early scheduling has to do with the rust, or do you think it's coaching being the reason some guys don't look ready to start the season?
I mean, the preseason basically doesn't do anything for guys anymore because guys aren't playing most of the games. You don't get that chance to build up the chemistry. So like the first few games are kind of like the preseason still. And so I think rust is more to do with how it looks.
I also I think San Jose, you can make that argument. I don't think against Vegas they had that same rust. Like, I think they looked a lot better against Vegas, where they didn't have the same mishaps.
Well, and also
in the sense of it felt like things were just not clicking in the way that it was against Vegas, against San Jose. And I think that can largely be attributed to, I mean, this is purely anecdotal. There's nothing that can be done to justify this. But I think having a 1 week layoff from the last preseason game, over a 1 week layoff from the last preseason game to the start of the season, I think that hurt the Ducks from a timing perspective.
Well, the thing is, I don't think coaching is an issue because against the Sharks, like, they were engaged. They were playing hard. It's just that they couldn't really do anything with the puck.
Mm-hmm.
But coaching to me is not a huge issue right now.
Yeah.
So.
And then Elizabeth Leo said, question, if Fowler was traded and Luno did stay up, how would you do the blue line pairings?
I mean, you could probably just you can't just plug in Zellweger.
I would probably put Lacombe with Luno and put Zellweger with Gudas.
Yep, that's a good call.
And then you keep Dumoulin and Mintyukov together.
Yeah, because no matter what, you're still going to have a lefty on the right side. So there's no getting around that.
Yeah,
but
there's just no way.
I don't hate that. Yeah.
Yep. All right. I think that's going to do it for us tonight.
Wow. It's been a journey.
It has.
But I can't let you get out of here without doing a blind ranking.
Okay.
Pick a category.
Just you pick one. Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. Okay. Okay, this is going to be fun. Dumb ways to die.
Oh, God.
Again, you have to blind ranking, for those who don't know, is you have to rank something 1 through 5 without knowing what comes next. So, okay, dumb ways to die. Number 1, scratch a drug dealer's brand new ride. So you scratch a drug dealer's car and now you get killed.
5? I have no clue, but I'm just gonna start with 5, I guess.
Okay. Disturb a nest of wasps for no good reason. So you just decide, I'm just going to kick this nest of wasps, and you get annihilated by the wasps.
4.
Okay. That's a pretty dumb one. I think I'd put that below the drug dealer one.
Yeah, I already have drug dealer at 5, so 4.
Use a clothes dryer as a hiding place.
3. I think I'm literally just going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on this. 3.
That is really dumb. That is really, really dumb. Again, drug dealer should be your 3 right now. So you have messed that up. Okay, this next one. It's going to be tough to rank. Invite a psycho killer inside.
That's only one that I'm like, could that be 1 because it might at least be short? But if it's a psycho killer,
they're probably going to torture you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to keep what I was doing and do 5, 4, 3, and that's going to be 2.
All right, do you want to know your number 1?
Let's hear it.
I'm not making this up. This is word for word. Getting too fat.
You know what? I'm good with that as a number 1.
Honestly, you out of all the mistakes you made, you somehow landed on the right number 1.
That is the correct number 1, where at least I enjoyed life.
Yeah, at least you were fat and happy. I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of want to do another one, but I think we should go out on that high note.
That is the worst one we've done. So let's get out of here.
It's pretty funny though. The more random, the funnier.
Sure.
I think kicking a nest of wasps that one got to me for some reason.
Yeah.
That was very funny.
None of that sounded fun, putting myself in the brain space of trying to rank that.
Well, it's more fun being the one that asks the questions than having to actually do the ranking. I get to just watch you just squirm.
Which is why I usually ask the questions here.
Yep. Okay, well, if you want to help support our podcast and you want to keep this thing going, there's a few very easy ways to do that. Number 1, go check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. For $2 pledge a month, you get access to our patrons-only Discord server. This is a great way to connect with other diehard Ducks fans. It's a great way to connect with us. You can chat with us any time of day, pretty much, during regular business hours. And then you can also connect with Derek Lee, Ducks beat writer, who's in there as well. Patrick of the Hockey News, also in there. Go check that out. $2 a month. Honestly, how much is Twitter Blue? How much is Twitter costing these days?
Don't know.
Well, anyway, $2 Discord is a much better investment, is all I'll say.
Yep.
And then you can bump that up to $7.50 a month. So in addition to the Discord server, you also get 2 bonus podcast episodes a month. So we do about 4 regular shows a month, but you get 2 more on top of that through this. We just did one where we predicted the rankings of every NHL division.
My Atlantic's wild.
And it was a slog in a good way. Like we really put thought into it. We really rolled up our sleeves, and it was a lot of fun. So check that out. And then on top of the bonus podcast episodes, you also get exclusive player breakdown videos. So we were referencing it earlier, but there's now a video up of every single one of Tristan Luneau's shifts from Vegas. So you can make up your own mind. Did he have a good game? Did he not? It's all right there for you. Very convenient. That is at patreon.com/crashthepond. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave us a rating on Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The podcast goes up there. There's also prospect videos that go up there. So like the ones on the Patreon, but more for prospects. There's one up right now on Dionisio, first game in the AHL. Go check that out. Find us on social media. We're on Twitter. And on that note, thanks for listening. Glad that hockey is back, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Bye.